Alright, hold up before you scroll away. Let me ask you something real quick. What if I told you that the boys you see goofing around on variety shows, eating ramen at 2 a.m. in their dorm, and pretending they're just regular guys, are actually sitting on a property empire that would make real estate agents weep? Yeah, we're talking about Stray Kids, the same group that debuted through a survival show with literally nothing but raw talent and sheer desperation. But here's the thing. Fast forward to 2025 and beyond, and these 8 men have been quietly, almost secretly, stacking up luxury properties across Seoul, Australia, and beyond. We're talking penthouses with skyline views, family homes bought in full cash, and real estate investments so smart even their own mothers didn't see it coming. So here's my question for you. Which member bought a property so expensive that the media called it the most expensive idol purchase of the year? Which one secretly secured a home for his parents before they even knew about it? And who among them owns a place in a neighborhood where the average apartment costs more than most people earn in a lifetime? Buckle up, because this list is going to hit different. Let's start from number 8. And trust me, by the time we get to number 1, your jaw will be on the floor. Let's go. Number 8. I.N. The magnate's silent power move in Busan, a gift that made his mother cry. You know what's wild? When we think about Stray Kids and luxury properties, most people immediately jump to the Hyungs, Bang Chan, Lee No, maybe Hyunjin or Felix. But no, we're starting this list with someone who flies completely under the radar when it comes to wealth and real estate, and that's Hyunjin, the magnate, the baby of the group, the one everyone still treats like a little kid. But here's the reality check that nobody was ready for. N is not a kid anymore, and the financial move he made quietly in Busan is proof that this young man has been thinking way beyond his years. We're talking about a full-on luxury apartment purchase in one of Busan's most prestigious coastal districts, and the way he did it? Absolutely no one saw it coming. Not the fans, not the media, and certainly not his own mother. Let me break this down for you because the details are genuinely jaw-dropping. Hyunjin was born on February 8, 2001. In Busan, South Korea's second-largest city, a sprawling port metropolis known for its beaches, seafood markets, and increasingly, its booming luxury real estate market. Hyunjin grew up in a regular, hard-working family. His parents weren't wealthy by any stretch of the imagination. They were the kind of family where everyone counted, where sacrifices were made daily so their son could chase his dream of becoming an idol. And chase it he did. Hyunjin auditioned for JYP Entertainment, made it through the brutal trainee system, survived the savage elimination rounds of the Stray Kids survival show, and debuted in 2018 at just 17 years old. But here's the thing people forget. When Hyunjin left Busan for Seoul to become a trainee, he was barely a teenager. He left behind his family, his comfort zone, everything familiar, and threw himself into one of the most competitive industries on the planet. And for years, while he was training, performing, touring, and working himself to the bone, his family back in Busan was still living in the same modest home. They didn't upgrade. They didn't move. They waited, they supported, and they prayed. Fast forward to around 2023-2024, and something shifted. Stray Kids had officially become one of the biggest acts in global music. Stadium tours, millions of albums sold, brand deals with massive companies. The money was flowing, and flowing hard. And while most young idols in their early 20s might splurge on cars, designer clothes, or flashy accessories, Hyunjin did something that tells you everything about his character. He went property hunting, not in Seoul, not in some trendy Gangnam district, but in Busan, his hometown, the place where his parents still lived. Reports and real estate tracking sources in South Korea began to pick up on a transaction in the Haeundae district. And if you don't know Haeundae, let me paint the picture for you. Haeundae is the premium address in Busan. It's the Gangnam of the South Coast. We're talking about a district where luxury high-rise apartments overlook the ocean, where the average price per pyeong, that's about 3.3 square meters, can range anywhere from 30 million to over 70 million won depending on the building and the floor. The most elite complexes in Haeundae, like the LCT Landmark Tower, Haeundae Ipark, and Marine City, are home to CEOs, celebrities, and old money families who've held property there for generations. And right there, in that world of ocean view penthouses and rooftop infinity pools, Hyunjin reportedly secured a unit. Now, the exact price has never been officially confirmed. Korean privacy laws around real estate transactions for public figures are strict, and JYP Entertainment has never commented on individual members' personal finances. But based on the district, the building tier, and the size estimates that surfaced from property registry data, industry insiders place the value somewhere in the range of 1.5 to 2.5 billion won. Let me put that in perspective for you. That's roughly 1.1 to 1.9 million US dollars. For a kid who was eating convenience store kimbap as a trainee just 5 or 6 years earlier. But here's the part that genuinely wrecks me emotionally every time I think about it. Multiple fan-translated interviews and behind-the-scenes moments have shown that Hyunjin is deeply, almost painfully attached to his family. He's talked about how his mother used to call him every night during his trainee days, how she would send him side dishes from Busan by mail because she was worried he wasn't eating well, and how his father worked extra hours so Hyunjin wouldn't feel guilty about the financial burden of being a trainee. Because yes, being a trainee costs money. Families often support their kids financially during those years with no guarantee of debut or success. So when Hyunjin reportedly told his parents about the apartment, some fan accounts suggest he didn't even tell them until after the purchase was finalized. His mother's reaction was, according to those close to the family, pure shock. We're talking tears, disbelief, the kind of overwhelming emotion that comes when your youngest child, the baby you raised and worried about, turns around and hands you the keys to a home you never could have imagined living in. And that's the thing about Hyunjin that separates this from just being a rich idol buys properties story. This wasn't about flexing. This wasn't about investment portfolios or building a real estate empire. This was a son from Busan who remembered every sacrifice, every late-night phone call, every packed lunch sent through the mail, and decided that the first major financial move of his life would be making sure his parents never had to worry about housing again. The apartment reportedly features full ocean views. We're talking floor-to-ceiling windows where you can watch the sunrise over the Pacific every single morning. High-end finishes, underground parking, 24-hour security concierge, access to premium building amenities including a fitness center, sauna, and rooftop garden. It's the kind of place where you walk in, and the air just feels different, cleaner, quieter, like the world outside can't touch you. And his mom lives there now. Let that sink in. The woman who used to pack kimbap and send it across the country because she was scared her teenage son wasn't eating enough, she now wakes up to an ocean view in one of the most expensive zip codes in Busan. If that doesn't hit you right in the chest, I don't know what will. But here's what I want you to think about as we move forward in this list. If this is number 8, if the Magne's quiet family gift is where we're starting, then what on earth are the other 7 members hiding? Because trust me, it gets way, way bigger from here. And the next one? Number 7 is about to introduce you to a member whose property game is so unexpected, so cleverly hidden, that even hardcore stays had absolutely no idea. Ready? Let's keep going. Number 7, Seungmin, the quiet intellectual's strategic investment in Yongsan. Nobody knew until the records leaked. Okay, if number 8 already had you emotional, then number 7 is going to make you rethink everything you thought you knew about Kim Seungmin. Because here's the thing about Seungmin, he's the member that the general public probably underestimates the most. He's not the loud one. He's not the one doing viral TikTok challenges or dominating fashion magazine covers. Seungmin is the guy in the background with perfect pitch, a wickedly sharp sense of humor that only long-time stays truly appreciate, and as it turns out, a financial brain that would make Wall Street analysts nod in respect. This is a man who has been described by his own groupmates as the most organized person they've ever met, someone who reads books on his days off, someone who plans everything down to the smallest detail. And apparently that meticulous, almost surgical approach to life extends directly into real estate. Because Kim Seungmin didn't just buy a property, he made a calculated investment move so clean, so under the radar, that even when the transaction data eventually surfaced through Korean property registry tracking, people genuinely couldn't believe it. Let me set the stage here, because the location alone tells you everything about how this man thinks. We're talking about Yongsan-gu, and if you're not deep into Seoul real estate, let me educate you real quick, because this is important context. Yongsan is not just any district in Seoul. It is, as of the mid-2020s, arguably the most transformative and strategically valuable piece of urban real estate in all of South Korea. Here's why. Yongsan sits right in the geographic heart of Seoul, sandwiched between the Han River to the south and the old city center to the north. For decades, a massive chunk of Yongsan was occupied by the United States Army garrison, the Yongsan Garrison, one of the largest U.S. military bases in Asia. That base officially relocated to Pyeongtaek starting in the late 2010s, and the land, we're talking about a sprawling, prime, central Seoul territory, has been earmarked for one of the most ambitious urban redevelopment projects in Korean history. The Yongsan International Business District, the transformation of the old base into a massive park similar to New York's Central Park, new luxury residential towers, tech hubs, cultural centers. The plans are staggering. And what does that mean for property values? It means that anyone smart enough to buy in Yongsan before the full redevelopment wave hits is essentially sitting on a gold mine. Property values in the district have been climbing aggressively year over year, and projections from major Korean real estate firms suggest that premium Yongsan addresses could see value increases of 30 to 50% or more over the next decade. And guess who quietly secured a unit in a premium Yongsan high-rise right in the sweet spot of that growth curve?
Seungmin.
Born September 22, 2000, Seungmin grew up in a relatively stable, middle-class family environment. Unlike some of his groupmates who came from more financially challenging backgrounds, Seungmin's upbringing was comfortable but by no means extravagant. He was a good student, genuinely good, not just idol says they like school good. He was the type of kid who actually paid attention in class, who valued education, who approached problems with logic rather than impulse. That personality trait carried directly into his career with Stray Kids, where he's known as the member who prepares the most meticulously for performances, who studies songs and choreography with an almost academic intensity, and who, according to multiple group interviews, is the one the other members go to when they need practical advice. So it shouldn't surprise anyone that when Seungmin decided to enter the property market, he didn't just throw money at a flashy Gangnam penthouse to impress people.
No.
He studied the market. He looked at growth corridors. He analyzed the redevelopment timelines. And he chose Yongsan, the single most strategically intelligent real estate bet you could make in Seoul in the early to mid-2020s. The property in question is reportedly located in one of the newer premium residential complexes in the Yongsan area, the kind of building that went up as part of the first wave of post-garrison redevelopment. We're talking about a complex with cutting-edge architectural design, smart home systems integrated into every unit, floor-to-ceiling windows with unobstructed views of the Han River and Namsan Tower, underground parking with electric vehicle charging stations, a residents-only fitness center, co-working spaces, a rooftop terrace, and 24-hour concierge security. These aren't just apartments, they're lifestyle ecosystems designed for young professionals and high-net-worth individuals who want to live in the future of Seoul. The estimated value of Seungmin's unit, based on registry data and comparable sales in the same building tier, falls somewhere in the range of 2 to 3 billion won. That's roughly 1.5 to 2.3 million US dollars. And here's the kicker. Given the Yongsan growth trajectory, that number is almost certainly higher now than when he purchased it. The man literally made money by buying smart and waiting. That's not idle behavior. That's investor behavior. But what makes this story genuinely fascinating isn't just the financial play. It's the secrecy. Seungmin is, without exaggeration, one of the most private members of Stray Kids when it comes to his personal life. While other members occasionally share glimpses of their living spaces on VLive or Instagram, Seungmin keeps that door firmly shut. He almost never talks about money, possessions, or material things. In group settings, he deflects conversations about wealth with humor or simply changes the subject. There was even a moment during a fan sign event, widely circulated among stays, where a fan asked him if he'd bought any property yet, and Seungmin literally laughed, shook his head, and said something along the lines of, "I'm just a regular person. Don't worry about that." Meanwhile, the dude was already sitting on a multi-billion won Yongsan investment. The audacity, the composure, the poker face of a man who could probably win at professional-level card games. And then there's the family angle, which adds another emotional layer to this. Seungmin has spoken in various interviews about wanting to make his parents proud, not through fame or celebrity status, but through stability. He's mentioned that his parents valued financial security and practical thinking, and that those values were instilled in him from a young age. So when you look at this Yongsan purchase through that lens, it's not just a smart investment. It's Seungmin proving to his family that the years of idle training, the uncertainty, the grueling schedules and endless flights and packed stadiums, all of it was leading somewhere solid, somewhere real, somewhere his parents could look at and say, okay, he's going to be fine. There's also the matter of timing, which is worth noting. Seungmin reportedly made this purchase during a period when Korean interest rates were fluctuating and the real estate market was experiencing what analysts called a correction phase, basically, a temporary dip in prices before the next upward surge. Buying during a correction, especially in a district with confirmed long-term development plans backed by the national government, is textbook smart investing. It's the kind of move that financial advisors charge thousands of dollars to recommend, and Seungmin apparently just did it. Whether he had professional guidance or whether this was his own research-driven decision is unclear, but either way, the result speaks for itself. Now, I want you to sit with this for a second. We're only at number 7. The youngest member bought his mom an ocean view apartment in Busan's most premium district. The studious, quiet vocalist made a genius-level strategic investment in Seoul's hottest growth corridor. And we still have 6 more members to go. The properties get bigger, the price tags get heavier, and the stories behind them get even more intense. So here's my question for you heading into number 6. What happens when a member of Stray Kids doesn't just buy one property, but starts building something that looks suspiciously like a real estate portfolio? And what if that member is someone you'd never, ever expect to be thinking about property investments in the first place? Yeah, number 6 is going to surprise you. Let's keep it moving. Number 6, Han, the secret studio loft in Seongsu-dong, where Seoul's coolest district meets a songwriter's hidden sanctuary. Alright, let me just say this up front. If there's one member of Stray Kids whose property purchase tells you everything about who they really are as a person, it's this one. We're talking about Han Jae-sung, the lyrical genius, the emotional hurricane, the man who can write a hit song in the back of a moving tour bus and then have a full existential crisis about whether the second verse was good enough. Han is chaos and brilliance wrapped into one compact, hoodie-wearing package, and his real estate choice is, honestly, the most him thing I've ever heard. Because Han didn't go for the obvious. He didn't buy a sleek Gangnam Tower unit with marble floors and a doorman in a suit. He didn't follow the typical idol playbook of securing the most expensive address possible just to say he made it. No, Han Jae-sung went and found himself a loft-style property in Seongsu-dong, and if you understand what Seongsu-dong represents in the cultural landscape of modern Seoul, then you already know why this is absolutely perfect. But if you don't, let me take you there, because this neighborhood is a character in this story all by itself. Seongsu-dong is located in Seongdong-gu on the north side of the Han River, and over the past 5 to 7 years, it has undergone one of the most dramatic cultural transformations of any neighborhood in Asia. People call it the Brooklyn of Seoul, and honestly, that comparison doesn't even do it justice anymore. Seongsu-dong used to be an industrial district. We're talking old shoe factories, printing workshops, small manufacturing plants, warehouses with corrugated metal walls and oil-stained concrete floors. It was gritty, unglamorous, and completely off the radar for anyone looking for trendy real estate. But then something happened, the same thing that happened to Williamsburg in New York, Shoreditch in London, and Shimokitazawa in Tokyo. Artists moved in. Creatives saw those old factory spaces and thought, this is where I want to build something. Cafes started opening in converted warehouses. Independent fashion brands set up showrooms in old printing houses. Galleries popped up in spaces that still had industrial cranes bolted to the ceilings. And suddenly, almost overnight, Seongsu-dong became the place to be if you were young, creative, and wanted to exist outside the polished, corporate energy of Gangnam. It became the neighborhood where Seoul's underground music producers held listening sessions, where indie filmmakers screened rough cuts, where fashion designers who were too avant-garde for department stores found their tribe. And it's in this exact environment, this raw, creative, anti-establishment pocket of Seoul, that Han Ji-sung reportedly found and purchased a loft-style property that is, by all accounts, less of a traditional apartment and more of a creative sanctuary. Now, let me be clear about what loft style means in the Seongsu-dong context, because it's not like a loft in a generic new construction building. We're talking about converted industrial spaces, units carved out of former factories or warehouses, with exposed brick walls, original steel beams, soaring double-height ceilings that can reach 4 to 5 meters, polished concrete floors, and massive industrial windows that flood the space with natural light. These are the kinds of spaces that architects and interior designers drool over, because the bones of the building tell a story of labor, of making things with your hands, of raw creation. And for someone like Han, whose entire identity is built around creating, writing lyrics at 3 a.m., composing melodies on a MIDI keyboard in the dark, pouring his deepest anxieties and hopes into songs that millions of people around the world connect with, this kind of space isn't just a home. It's an extension of his soul. Reports suggest that Han's unit features an open-plan layout, meaning minimal walls, maximum flow. The main living area and the studio space reportedly share the same open floor, separated not by traditional walls but by modular furniture arrangements and acoustic panels that can be moved and reconfigured depending on what he needs. Imagine walking in and seeing a living area with a low-profile sofa, a coffee table stacked with notebooks and lyric sheets, a vinyl record player, because yes, Han has talked about his love for analog music formats, and then your eyes travel across the open space to a fully equipped music production setup. Monitors, a mixing board, a vocal recording booth tucked into one corner with professional-grade soundproofing, racks of synthesizers and drum machines, guitars hanging on wall mounts against exposed red brick. It's not a home with a studio attached. It's a studio with a home attached. And that distinction matters because it tells you exactly where Han's priorities are. The estimated value of this property is fascinating from a market perspective. Seongsu-dong loft conversions have been climbing in value at a rate that has shocked even seasoned Seoul real estate analysts. 5 years ago, you could pick up a converted loft unit in Seongsu for maybe 800 million to 1.2 billion won. Today, premium units, especially larger ones with the kind of double-height ceilings and industrial character that Han's reportedly has, are trading in the range of 1.8 to 2.8 billion won, roughly 1.4 to 2.1 million US dollars. And the trajectory is still pointing up because Seongsu-dong isn't just a trend anymore. It's become a permanently established cultural district, with major brands like Dior, Gentle Monster, and Samsung opening flagship experience stores there, further cementing its status as a premium address for the creative class. But here's the part of this story that really gets under my skin in the best possible way. Han Ji-sung has been one of the most open members of Stray Kids when it comes to talking about his mental health struggles. He's spoken publicly about dealing with anxiety, about moments where the pressure of being an idol felt suffocating, about needing space, literal, physical space, to decompress and find himself again. In multiple interviews and V-Live sessions, he's described how writing music is his therapy, his lifeline, the thing that keeps him grounded when everything else feels like it's spinning too fast. So when you learn that this man's first major property purchase wasn't a status symbol but a creative refuge, a place designed from the ground up to facilitate the one activity that keeps him sane, it hits completely differently. This isn't about wealth. This isn't about showing off. This is about survival, about self-preservation, about a 24-year-old who has been in the public eye since he was a teenager, finding a physical space in this world where he can just breathe and create and exist without the weight of expectations crushing him. There's also the Malaysia connection that adds depth to this story. Han lived in Malaysia for a significant portion of his childhood. His family relocated there, and he attended school in the country before eventually moving back to South Korea to pursue his idol dream. That experience of living between cultures, of being a Korean kid in a Southeast Asian environment, of navigating different languages and social norms, it gave Han a perspective that's broader than most people his age. And you can see that global sensibility in his choice of Seongsu-dong, a neighborhood that itself is a melting pot of influences. Korean industrial heritage meets Western loft culture meets Japanese minimalist cafe aesthetics meets global streetwear fashion. It's a neighborhood that doesn't belong to any single identity, and for someone like Han who has never quite fit into a single box, it makes perfect sense. Now, the secrecy around this purchase is also worth noting. Han is simultaneously one of the most emotionally transparent and one of the most privately guarded members of the group. He'll tell you about his deepest fears on a live broadcast, but he won't tell you where he lives or what he owns. When members have occasionally referenced living spaces or home life in group content, Han typically steers the conversation elsewhere or makes a joke that deflects attention. There's no Instagram post of his loft. No room tour content.
No subtle flex.
The space exists entirely for him, and maybe for the music that comes out of it at 4 a.m. when the rest of Seoul is sleeping and Han Jae-sung is wide awake, headphones on, chasing a melody that won't leave his head. And honestly, that might be the most beautiful thing about this entire list so far. The magne bought his mom an ocean view. The quiet vocalist made a genius investment play. And the anxious genius songwriter built himself a sanctuary where creation is the only currency that matters. We're at number 6, and the emotional weight of these stories is already stacking up. But let me warn you right now, number 5 is a completely different energy. We're about to shift from soulful and introspective to absolutely jaw-dropping in terms of sheer scale and ambition. The member at number 5? Let's just say he didn't buy a home, he bought a statement. And when the price tag leaked, people genuinely thought it was a typo. You ready? Let's go. Number 5, Changbin, the Gangnam Fortress in Cheongdam-dong, a rapper who bought his way into old money territory. Listen, I need you to mentally prepare yourself for this one because the energy is about to shift dramatically. We've had the emotional family gift, the calculated investment play, and the artistic sanctuary. All beautiful, all meaningful, all quietly impressive. But number 5? Number 5 is loud. Not in a flashy, look-at-me kind of way. Changbin would never do that, but loud in the sense that when you hear the location, the building, and the estimated price, your brain is going to short-circuit for a second. Because Seo Changbin, the compact powerhouse rapper with the deepest voice in fourth-generation K-pop, the guy who spits bars so hard the stage shakes, the man who built his entire artistic identity on proving that size doesn't determine power, this man went and bought a property in Cheongdam-dong. And if you know anything about Seoul real estate, you just gasped. If you don't, let me explain why that name alone sends shockwaves through anyone who understands the Korean property landscape, because Cheongdam-dong isn't just expensive. It's a completely different universe of wealth. Cheongdam-dong sits in the heart of Gangnam-gu, and while the whole world knows Gangnam from the PSY song and the general association with South Korean affluence, most people don't understand that Gangnam itself has tiers. There's regular Gangnam, nice apartments, good schools, upper-middle-class families. Then there's premium Gangnam, high-end towers, luxury boutiques, successful professionals. And then there's Cheongdam-dong, the absolute apex, the peak of the peak, the neighborhood where South Korea's wealthiest families, top-tier celebrities, fashion house flagships, and Michelin-starred restaurants coexist in a bubble of wealth so concentrated it has its own gravitational pull. Walking down Cheongdam-dong's main boulevard is like walking through a living luxury catalog. You pass the Chanel flagship, the Dior boutique, the Louis Vuitton store that looks like a piece of modern art, the Hermes building with its signature orange glow. The restaurants here don't have prices on the menu. If you have to ask, you shouldn't be sitting down. The cars parked on the street aren't just Mercedes and BMWs. They're Bentleys, Rolls-Royces, Maybachs, and occasionally a hypercar that costs more than most apartments in other districts. This is where K-pop's biggest names have historically planted their flags. We're talking the neighborhood of choice for top actors, senior executives of entertainment conglomerates, and heirs to chaebol fortunes. And Seo Changbin, son of a regular working-class family from Yongsan, a city in Gyeonggi province just south of Seoul, walked into this world and put his name on a property deed. The audacity, the raw, beautiful, defiant audacity of it. Let me give you the background on Changbin because it makes this purchase hit 1,000 times harder. Changbin was born on August 11, 1999, in Yongsan, a satellite city that, while perfectly comfortable, is worlds away from the gilded towers of Cheongdam-dong. His family was solidly working class. There were no silver spoons, no trust funds, no family connections to the entertainment industry. Changbin got into music because he loved it, pure, uncomplicated, borderline obsessive love for rap and hip-hop. He started writing lyrics as a teenager, began uploading his own tracks, and eventually caught the attention of JYP Entertainment, where he entered the trainee system and, through sheer force of will and undeniable talent, became one of the founding members of 3RACHA, the producing and songwriting unit within Stray Kids alongside Bang Chan and Han. And here's what people outside the K-pop industry don't fully appreciate. Being in 3RACHA doesn't just mean you perform. It means you create. Changbin, along with Bang Chan and Han, has writing and producing credits on virtually every Stray Kids song. That means royalties. Significant, compounding, continuously flowing royalties from an ever-growing catalog of music that is streamed billions of times globally. Every time God's Menu plays on Spotify, Changbin earns. Every time Maniac soundtracks a TikTok video, Changbin earns. Every time a Stray Kids album is purchased, and we're talking albums that sell millions of copies per release, Changbin earns. The man isn't just a performer, he's a publishing powerhouse. And that publishing income, stacked on top of touring revenue, brand endorsements, and group activities, has quietly built Changbin a financial foundation that most people his age can't even comprehend. So when he decided to make his move in the property market, he didn't go small. He went Cheongdam. The property is reportedly located in one of the more exclusive residential complexes in the Cheongdam area, not one of the ultra-tall new towers, but rather a mid-rise luxury building, the kind that values privacy, exclusivity, and architectural refinement over sheer height. These are the buildings where the resident list reads like a who's who of Korean society, where the lobby has original art installations, where the elevator requires a key card specific to your floor, and where the building management company has a strict policy of absolute confidentiality regarding who lives there. We're talking about a property with premium square footage, significantly larger than the typical Seoul apartment, with reports suggesting a generous multi-room layout that includes a dedicated home studio space, because of course Changbin would have a studio, a spacious living area, a modern kitchen with high-end European appliances, and a master suite that could comfortably fit most people's entire apartments inside it. The finishes are reportedly top-tier. Natural stone countertops, hardwood flooring sourced from premium mills, custom-built closet systems, a bathroom with a walk-in rain shower and a freestanding soaking tub, and smart home integration that controls lighting, temperature, security, and entertainment systems from a single panel or phone app. The estimated value? Brace yourself. We're looking at somewhere in the range of 3.5 to 5 billion won. That's approximately 2.7 to 3.8 million US dollars. For a 25-year-old rapper from Yongsan. Let that number settle into your brain for a moment. 3.5 to 5 billion won. In Cheongdam-dong, the neighborhood where old money families have held property for generations, where real estate isn't just about living but about social positioning, about signaling to the world that you have arrived at a level of success that most people only see in movies. And Changbin, the shortest member of Stray Kids, the guy who jokes about his height in every other interview, the man who channels his intensity into bars so aggressive they leave bruises on the beat. He's there now. He belongs there now. And here's the emotional dimension that makes this story resonate beyond just numbers and addresses. Changbin has been remarkably candid in interviews about the chip on his shoulder. Not in an arrogant way, in a deeply human way. He's talked about being underestimated because of his stature, about people assuming he couldn't be a serious rapper because he didn't look the part, about the pressure of being a trainee from a non-privileged background in an industry that often favors those with connections. There's a famous pre-debut story among stays where Changbin reportedly told a fellow trainee that he would make it no matter what, that he would work harder than everyone else, sleep less than everyone else, write more than everyone else, because failure simply wasn't an option he was willing to accept. And when you fast forward from that hungry, determined teenage trainee to the man who now owns property in Cheongdam-dong, the narrative arc is almost cinematic in its completeness. He said he'd make it. He made it. And then he bought a home in the most exclusive neighborhood in the country to prove it, not to anyone else, but to himself. The secrecy around this purchase is also characteristically Changbin. The man is intensely private about his finances and personal life. While he's open about his creative process, his fitness routines, and his love of food, the guy can eat, and he documents it enthusiastically. He draws a hard line when it comes to wealth and possessions. You will never see Changbin post a photo of his Cheongdam apartment. You will never hear him mention the address, the building, or the view. The only reason this information surfaced at all is because Korean property registry data is technically accessible through certain legal channels, and real estate tracking platforms that monitor celebrity purchases flagged the transaction. Even then, Changbin has never confirmed or denied it. He just keeps showing up to the studio, keeps writing verses that cut like razors, and keeps living his life as if he's still that hungry kid from Yongsan with something to prove. Number 4. Felix, the Sydney waterfront dream. A son who crossed the ocean and brought home back with him. Okay, I'm going to need everyone to sit down for this one, and I mean actually sit down, grab a drink, get comfortable, because number 4 is about to take this list across hemispheres, across time zones, and straight into the kind of story that makes you believe in the whole dream big, work hard, change your family's life narrative that most people think only exists in movies. We're talking about Lee Felix, born Lee Yongbak on September 15, 2000 in Sydney, Australia. The boy with the freckles, the impossibly deep voice, the sunshine personality that could literally light up a stadium, and apparently a real estate portfolio that now spans 2 continents. Because Felix didn't just buy a property in Seoul like a normal successful idol.
No.
Felix went home. Home to Sydney, home to Australia, home to the country he left behind as a teenager with nothing but a suitcase and a dream and the terrified hope that maybe, just maybe, he could make it as a K-pop idol in a country where he barely spoke the language. And what he brought back to that home? A waterfront property in one of the most prestigious harborside suburbs in Sydney. Let me tell you right now, if you thought Cheongdam-dong was expensive, welcome to the Sydney property market, where the numbers will make your eyes water. But before we get into the property itself, we need to talk about Felix's journey, because without understanding where this kid came from, the weight of this purchase loses half its impact. Felix grew up in Sydney's western suburbs, and for those unfamiliar with Sydney's geography, the western suburbs are the working class and middle class heartland of the city. It's where immigrant families put down roots, where people work long hours in trades, logistics, healthcare, and retail to build stable lives for their children. Felix's family is Korean-Australian. His parents emigrated from South Korea to Australia, building a life in a new country with a new language and a new culture. They raised Felix and his sisters in a loving, supportive environment, but it wasn't a life of luxury. It was a life of normalcy, of school runs and packed lunches and weekend sports and the quiet, unglamorous grind of immigrant parenthood. When Felix auditioned for JYP Entertainment during their global auditions in 2017, he was just 16 years old. And when he was accepted as a trainee, it meant leaving everything, his family, his friends, his school, his entire life in Australia, and flying to Seoul to enter a world he knew almost nothing about. Felix has spoken about those early days with a rawness that still shakes fans when they hear it. He barely spoke Korean. He couldn't read the training schedules properly. He struggled to communicate with the other trainees and staff. He was homesick to the point of tears, and not quiet tears, but the gut-wrenching, body-shaking kind of crying that happens when you're a teenager alone in a foreign country wondering if you've made the biggest mistake of your life. And then came the survival show, the Stray Kids Formation Program, where Felix was actually eliminated. Cut from the group. Told he wasn't good enough. Sent to the practice room to train alone while the other members continued filming. The footage of Felix during that period is some of the most heartbreaking content in K-pop history. A kid sitting alone in an empty practice room, dancing to his reflection, refusing to give up even after being told he was out. Of course, he was eventually brought back into the group. JY Park himself acknowledged that eliminating Felix was a mistake, and Felix debuted with Stray Kids in March 2018. But that scar, that memory of being told you're not enough, has never fully healed. Felix has referenced it in interviews years after debut, always with the same quiet intensity, always with the unspoken message, I will never let that happen again. I will never not be enough again. Fast forward to the mid-2020s, and Felix is not just enough. He's one of the most recognizable faces in global entertainment. Brand ambassador for Louis Vuitton, cover star for Vogue, GQ, and Harper's Bazaar. A social media presence with tens of millions of followers who adore his warmth, his humor, his vulnerability, and yes, that voice, the deep, resonant bass that sounds like velvet thunder and has become his sonic signature. And somewhere in the midst of all this success, Felix made a decision that speaks volumes about who he is at his core. He bought property in Sydney, not in Seoul, where he works, not in some trendy international destination for tax purposes. Sydney, the city where his parents still live, the city where his sisters grew up, the city he left behind at 16 and has been emotionally tethered to ever since. The property is reportedly located in one of Sydney's prestigious eastern or lower North Shore waterfront suburbs, areas like Point Piper, Mossman, Rose Bay, or Vaucluse, where the median house price casually exceeds 5 million Australian dollars, and the truly premium properties with direct harbour or ocean frontage can command 10 to 30 million Australian dollars or more. These are suburbs where you can see the Sydney Opera House and the Harbour Bridge from your living room window, where private jetties extend into the harbour, where the gardens are manicured by professional landscape architects, and where your neighbours are likely to be tech billionaires, media moguls, or fourth-generation old-money Australians whose families have owned the same waterfront block since before World War II. Now, the exact details of Felix's purchase are tightly guarded. Australian property records are not as publicly accessible as Korean ones, and neither Felix nor his management have ever confirmed the specifics. But multiple Korean media outlets and entertainment industry insiders have reported on the transaction, with estimated values ranging from 4 to 7 billion won. That's roughly 3 to 5.3 million US dollars, or about 4.5 to 8 million Australian dollars depending on exchange rates and timing. The property is described as a modern, architect-designed home, not a high-rise apartment, but an actual house, with multiple bedrooms, open-plan living areas that flow onto outdoor entertaining spaces, a swimming pool or spa area, and sweeping views of the water. In Sydney's harbourside real estate market, a property matching this description isn't just a home, it's a generational asset. Sydney waterfront property has historically appreciated at rates that outpace almost every other asset class in Australia, and properties in the eastern suburbs and lower North Shore that were purchased in the 2020s are projected to be worth significantly more by the end of the decade. And here's where the emotional core of this story lives, and I'm warning you now, this part is going to hurt in the best way possible. Felix reportedly purchased this property with his family in mind, not as an investment to flip. Not as a vacation home to visit twice a year. As a home for his parents. The same parents who scraped together money so their teenage son could fly to Seoul and chase an impossible dream. The same parents who stayed up late on Australian time to watch Korean broadcasts they couldn't understand, just to catch a glimpse of their boy on screen. The same parents who spent years telling their friends and neighbors, "Yes, our son is a singer in Korea," and quietly hoping that everything would work out, that he'd be safe, that he'd be happy, that the sacrifice was worth it. And now their son, the kid from the western suburbs who used to take the bus to school and do his homework at the kitchen table, has given them a waterfront home in one of the most exclusive postcodes in Australia. Felix's relationship with his family, particularly his mother, is one of the most well-documented emotional threads in the Stray Kids story. He's broken down in tears on multiple occasions talking about missing his family, about the guilt of being so far away, about wanting to give them everything they never had. There's a legendary moment from a fan meeting where a stay asked Felix what his biggest dream was, and without hesitation, he said, "To make my family proud and give them a comfortable life."
Not fame.
Not awards. Not chart positions. Family. Comfort. Security. And this property is the physical manifestation of that dream: brick, glass, water views, and a front door that his mother can walk through every morning knowing that her son kept his promise. The Australian connection also adds a fascinating dimension to Felix's overall financial picture. Unlike most K-pop idols whose assets are concentrated entirely within South Korea, Felix's Sydney property gives him geographic diversification, exposure to the Australian dollar, the Australian property market, and the Australian economic landscape, which operates on completely different cycles than the Korean market. Whether this was an intentional financial strategy or simply an emotional decision driven by love for his family, the practical result is the same. Felix has assets on 2 continents, in 2 of the most resilient property markets in the Asia-Pacific region. That's not just idle wealth. Number 3, Lee No, the Haeundae masterpiece designed around 3 cats, a lifestyle so private even his members were shocked. Alright, we have officially entered the top 3, and I need you to understand, the air is different up here. The numbers are different. The stories are different. Everything from this point forward operates on a level that separates successful idol from quietly building an empire while pretending to be a normal guy who just really loves his cats. And speaking of cats, yeah, you already know who this is. We're talking about Lee No. Lee Mi-ho, born October 25th, 1998. The main dancer of Stray Kids, the member with the sharpest tongue and the softest heart, the man who moves on stage like gravity is a suggestion he's chosen to ignore, and who, off stage, has constructed a private world so meticulously curated, so intentionally designed, and so fiercely guarded that even his own groupmates have admitted they don't fully know the extent of it. Because Lee No didn't just buy a luxury apartment. Lee No built a lifestyle. And the centerpiece of that lifestyle? A property in Cheongdam-dong that is, by every metric available, one of the most impressive residential purchases made by any 4th-generation K-pop idol. Period. Now, if Cheongdam-dong is the flashy, fashion-forward face of Seoul luxury, then Haeundae is its quieter, more sophisticated older sibling. Haeundae sits in Yongsan-gu, yes, the same district where Seungmin made his strategic play. But while Seungmin's purchase was about growth potential and future value, Lee No's Haeundae address is about something entirely different. It's about arrived status. Haeundae doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. It's not trying to be the next big thing it already is, and has been for over a decade. This is the neighborhood where foreign ambassadors live. The U.S. ambassador's residence? Haeundae. The Grand Hyatt Seoul, perched on the hill overlooking the Han River and the city skyline? Haeundae. Samsung's founding family, the Lees, arguably the most powerful family in South Korean business history. Their private compound is in Haeundae. And then there's the Haeundae the Hill complex, a name that has become almost mythical in Korean celebrity culture. Haeundae the Hill is a luxury residential development that was completed in 2014 and has since become the single most celebrity-dense address in South Korea. We're talking about a gated community of premium villas and apartments set into the hillside of Yongsan, with panoramic views of the Han River and Seoul Tower and the sprawling cityscape below. Security is fortress level, multiple checkpoints, 24-hour guards, CCTV coverage that would make a government facility jealous, and a strict no unauthorized visitors policy that has kept paparazzi and sightseeing fans at bay for years. Residents past and present have reportedly included members of BTS, Blackpink, top Korean actors, K-drama directors, tech CEOs, and various other individuals whose net worth starts at more than you'll ever see and goes up from there. And while neither Lee No nor JYP Entertainment has ever confirmed the exact building or complex, multiple real estate tracking sources and industry reports have placed Lee No's purchase within the Haeundae premium tier, whether in Haeundae the Hill itself or in one of the equally exclusive neighboring complexes that have sprouted up in the area over the past few years, each trying to capture the same blend of luxury, privacy, and prestige. The estimated value sits in a range that would make most people's heads spin. We're talking 4 to 6.5 billion won, roughly 3 to 5 million US dollars. At the higher end of that estimate, we're approaching territory that puts Lee No's property among the most expensive individual idol-owned residences in K-pop history. But here's where this story takes a turn that is so uniquely, so perfectly Lee No that it almost feels like fiction. Except it's not. Because multiple sources and fan-compiled observations suggest that Lee No didn't just buy a luxury unit and move in with standard furniture and standard fixtures. He reportedly customized the living space with a singular, uncompromising design philosophy, and that philosophy revolves around 3 small, furry, ridiculously pampered creatures named Sunny, Dunji, and Dory.
Yes.
Lee knows 3 cats. The 3 cats that have become so famous in the Stay fandom that they have their own fan accounts, their own merchandise references, and their own dedicated content segments. The 3 cats that Lee No talks about with more affection, more tenderness, and more genuine emotion than he shows toward almost any human being on camera. These cats aren't pets to Lee No, they're family. They're his emotional anchors. They're the reason he rushes home after schedules, the reason he turned down late-night hangout invitations from members during their earlier years, the reason he learned to cook elaborate meals, because he wanted to make sure Sunny, Dunji, and Dory were eating well even when commercial cat food didn't meet his standards. And when it came time to choose a home, Lee No apparently made the cat's comfort and safety a non-negotiable design priority. Reports and industry whispers paint a picture of a home that has been architecturally modified to be a feline paradise integrated into a human luxury space. We're talking about built-in cat walkways, elevated pathways along the walls and ceilings that allow the cats to move freely through the apartment at their own level, the kind of custom installations that specialist pet architects in Korea charge premium rates to design and build. Cat-safe window enclosures that let natural light and fresh air in while ensuring the cats can sit in sunbeams without any risk of falling or escaping. A dedicated cat room, a separate space designed exclusively for the cats, with temperature control, specialized flooring that's gentle on their paws, climbing structures, hiding spots, and reportedly a built-in water fountain system that provides filtered, flowing water because Lee No once mentioned in an interview that cats prefer running water over still water, and he wanted to make sure his cats always had the best. The kitchen, and this is where it gets even more Lee No, is reportedly a chef-grade installation. We're not talking about a nice kitchen with good appliances. We're talking about a kitchen that would make professional restaurant chefs envious. Lee No is genuinely passionate about cooking. It's one of his most well-known personal interests, and he's demonstrated serious culinary skill on multiple variety shows and in behind-the-scenes content. His Cheongdam-dong kitchen reportedly features professional-grade ventilation, a multi-burner gas range of the type used in commercial kitchens, a built-in steam oven, a sous vide setup, a walk-in pantry, and a counter space that gives him room to prepare elaborate meals for himself, his cats. Yes, he cooks for his cats, and on rare occasions, members or friends who are invited over. The rest of the living space follows a design aesthetic that has been described as warm minimalism, natural wood tones, soft neutral colors, indirect lighting that creates a calm atmosphere, floor-to-ceiling windows with motorized blinds, heated floors throughout, essential for Korean homes during the brutal winters, and a master bedroom suite that includes a walk-in closet and an en-suite bathroom with both a glass-enclosed rain shower and a deep soaking tub. The overall vibe, according to those who've described it, is less K-pop idol's flashy bachelor pad and more Scandinavian Japanese fusion retreat where a very particular man lives with 3 very particular cats. And that description is just, it's so Lee No it hurts. Now, let's talk about the emotional layer here, because beneath the luxury finishes and the cat walkways, there's a story that cuts deep. Lee No's path to Stray Kids was not straightforward. Before joining JYP Entertainment, he was a backup dancer. He appeared on stage with BTS as one of their performance dancers, which is a detail that still blows people's minds. He entered JYP as a trainee relatively late compared to some members, and during the Stray Kids survival show, his position was never fully secure. He was one of the members who had to constantly prove himself, constantly demonstrate that he belonged. And even after debut, Lee No carried himself with an independence and self-reliance that suggested a deep-seated need to be in control of his own life, his own space, his own narrative. The Cheongdam-dong purchase is the ultimate expression of that independence. This is a man who has created a world entirely on his own terms, a space that reflects his values, his aesthetics, his priorities, and his love for the 3 cats who have been his constant companions through the chaos of idol life. When his mother reportedly visited the property for the first time, the reaction was one of stunned silence followed by tears, not because of the luxury, but because of what it represented. Her son, the kid who left home to dance behind other artists, who survived elimination shows, who spent years sharing dorm rooms with 7 other guys, had built himself a home. A real home. Not a temporary idol apartment, but a permanent, deeply personal space that said, I'm here.
I'm staying.
I've made it, and I've made it exactly the way I wanted. And isn't that the mostly no thing you've ever heard? The man does nothing halfway, nothing by committee, nothing to please anyone else's expectations. He cooks because he wants to cook. He raises cats because he wants to raise cats. And he lives in Haeundae because he decided that's where his life, his real, private, non-celebrity life belongs. The secrecy level around this. Number 2, Hyunjin, the penthouse gallery in Seoul, where art, redemption, and luxury collide in silence. I knew you'd still be here. I knew you wouldn't leave. Because the moment I mentioned a scandal, a transformation, and a comeback arc, every single person reading this felt the name land in their chest before I even said it. Hwang Hyunjin, born March 20th, 2000. The face that launched a million fan cams, the dancer whose body moves like it's having a conversation with music that only he can hear, the visual center of stray kids whose cheekbones could cut glass and whose eyes carry a depth that cameras have never fully captured. And also the artist. Not artist in the way the entertainment industry loosely throws the word around. A genuine, paint on canvas, brush in hand, soul on display visual artist whose work has been exhibited, praised by professionals, and quietly collected by people who know that what Hyunjin creates isn't idle merchandise. It's art. Real art. The kind that makes you stand in front of it for 10 minutes without moving because something in the composition is speaking directly to a part of you that words can't reach. And this man, this complicated, beautiful, wounded, resurrected man, has reportedly purchased a penthouse in Seoul that he has transformed into something that isn't quite a home and isn't quite a gallery but exists in the luminous space between both. But we absolutely cannot, talk about this property without first talking about what Hyunjin went through to get here, because the journey is inseparable from the destination. In February 2021, Hyunjin was accused of school bullying, allegations from former classmates that surfaced during a broader wave of bullying accusations sweeping through the Korean entertainment industry. The details were messy, contested, and emotionally charged. JYP Entertainment initially responded cautiously, then Hyunjin himself issued a public apology, acknowledging that he had caused hurt to classmates during his school years, regardless of the specific details of each allegation. And then he disappeared. Hyunjin went on hiatus from Stray Kids, a hiatus that lasted months and that, at the time, felt like it could be permanent. In the K-pop industry, bullying scandals have ended careers. Idols have been permanently removed from groups, blacklisted from broadcasting, and erased from public life for similar allegations. And for weeks, then months, the question hung in the air like smoke. Is Hyunjin done? Is this the end? During that hiatus, something shifted in Hyunjin. Accounts from those close to him, translated interviews, member comments, and the tangible evidence of what came after suggest that the hiatus period was one of intense self-reflection, therapy, and creative exploration. Hyunjin, who had always been interested in visual art but had never had the time or emotional bandwidth to fully pursue it amidst the relentless idol schedule, threw himself into painting. He painted constantly, obsessively, like a man trying to express things that language had failed to contain. And when he returned to Stray Kids in July 2021, a return that was met with an outpouring of relief, joy, and emotion from stays worldwide, he came back different. Not broken different. Refined different. Like a blade that had been through the fire and come out sharper, cleaner, more purposeful. The Hyunjin who returned was more thoughtful in interviews, more intentional in his artistry, and more committed to the duality that defines him, the explosive performer on stage and the quiet, contemplative artist off it. And it is that duality, that tension between spectacle and solitude, between the roar of the crowd and the silence of the studio, that makes his Seoul-gu penthouse one of the most fascinating properties on this entire list. Seoul-gu is a district that often gets overshadowed in the popular imagination by its flashier neighbor, Gangnam-gu. But real estate insiders know that Seoul is, in many ways, the more refined choice. Where Gangnam screams its wealth through neon-lit boulevards and designer storefronts, Seoul whispers it through tree-lined residential streets, proximity to the Seoul Art Center, South Korea's premier performing arts complex, the Supreme Court of Korea, and some of the highest quality residential developments in the city. Seocho is where you live when you want the prestige of a Gangnam-adjacent address without the noise, the traffic, and the constant feeling of being on display. It's the choice of people who value culture over commerce, privacy over publicity, substance over spectacle. In other words, it's the perfect neighborhood for Hyunjin. The property itself is reportedly a penthouse unit, meaning top floor, maximum elevation, maximum privacy, and typically the largest and most premium floor plan in the building. Penthouses in premium Seocho complexes are not your standard apartment with a view. These are multi-level living spaces that can span 200 to 300 square meters or more, with private rooftop terraces, double-height living rooms, dedicated service entrances, and the kind of architectural flourishes, curved walls, custom skylights, cantilevered balconies, that turn a residential unit into a design statement. The estimated value of Hyunjin's penthouse falls in the range of 5 to 8 billion won, approximately 3.8 to 6.1 million US dollars, placing it firmly in the upper echelon of individual idle property purchases in South Korea. At the higher end of that estimate, this is a genuinely elite transaction, the kind that gets quietly discussed in Korean real estate circles and celebrity wealth tracking forums with a mixture of admiration and disbelief. But here is where this story becomes something entirely its own. Because Hyunjin has reportedly not treated this penthouse as a conventional living space. He has transformed significant portions of it into a functioning art studio and private gallery. Let me paint this picture for you. And yes, the pun is intended. Imagine stepping out of a private elevator, because penthouses in these buildings typically have dedicated elevator access, into a foyer that immediately signals you're entering a different kind of space. The walls aren't decorated with the typical luxury apartment fare of abstract prints or designer mirrors. Instead, they hold Hyunjin's own paintings, large-scale canvases in styles that range from abstract expressionism to figurative work to pieces that defy easy categorization, dark and swirling and visceral and beautiful in a way that makes you uncomfortable and fascinated simultaneously. The main living area, with its double-height ceilings and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Seocho skyline, and on clear days, the mountains beyond, serves a dual purpose. It's a living room, yes, with carefully selected furniture that favors clean lines and neutral tones so as not to compete with the art on the walls. But it's also a display space, a rotating exhibition of Hyunjin's work and, reportedly, pieces by other artists he admires and has begun collecting. Art collecting among young K-pop idols is extremely rare. It requires knowledge, taste, financial commitment, and a genuine passion for visual culture that goes beyond surface aesthetics. And Hyunjin, by all available accounts, has dived into this world with the same intensity he brings to choreography and performance. Then there's the studio space, and this is the room that reportedly takes up the most square footage in the entire penthouse. A dedicated painting studio with professional lighting rigs, the kind that simulate natural daylight regardless of the time, essential for accurate color work, paint-splattered drop cloths on the floor, canvases in various stages of completion leaning against walls and propped on easels, shelves stacked with tubes of oil paint, acrylics, brushes of every size, palette knives, turpentine linseed oil, and all the raw materials of a working artist. This isn't a vanity studio setup for Instagram photos. This is a space where work happens real, messy, obsessive, sometimes you don't sleep because the painting isn't finished yet work. Members of Stray Kids have occasionally referenced Hyunjin's art habit with a mixture of affection and bewilderment. Ban Chan once mentioned that Hyunjin sometimes shows up to schedules with paint still under his fingernails, and Changbin joked that Hyunjin's phone gallery contains more photos of his paintings than selfies. There's also reportedly a private rooftop terrace, standard for penthouses in this tier, that Hyunjin has turned into a contemplative outdoor space. Not a party terrace with a bar and lounge chairs, but something closer to a meditation garden. Minimal plantings, a simple seating area, open sky above, and the kind of panoramic city view that puts everything in perspective. It's the kind of space where you go at 2 a.m. when the painting isn't working and you need to stare at the lights of Seoul until your brain resets. Now, The emotional weight of this property becomes almost unbearable when you consider the timeline. Just a few years before purchasing this penthouse, Hyunjin was in the darkest period of his life. Publicly shamed, professionally sidelined, personally devastated, wondering if everything he'd worked for since childhood was over. And now he stands in a penthouse he owns, surrounded by art he created, looking out over a city that tried to cancel him and failed. Number 1. Bangchan, the sky residence at Korea's tallest tower, a leader who left home at 13 and built a kingdom in the clouds. This is it, the moment this entire list has been building toward. And I'm not going to lie to you, I've been holding my breath writing this because the story of Bangchan's property isn't just the most impressive entry on this list in terms of sheer value and prestige. It's the most emotionally devastating, the most cinematically perfect, and the most deeply earned piece of real estate owned by any idol in the 4th generation of K-pop. Maybe any generation. Because when you understand the full scope of what Christopher Bangchan went through to get here, the numbers on the price tag stop being numbers and start being a scoreboard of human endurance. So let me take you all the way back. All the way to the beginning. Not to 2018, when Stray Kids debuted. Not to 2017, when the Survival show aired. Not even to 2012, when a 14-year-old Korean-Australian kid first walked through the doors of JYP Entertainment as a fresh trainee. No, let's go back to Sydney, Australia, sometime around 2010 or 2011, when a young Christopher Bang, barely into his teens, made a decision that would define the rest of his life. He told his parents he wanted to be a K-pop idol. Think about that for a second. A kid in Sydney, thousands of miles from Seoul, growing up in a comfortable Australian-Korean family, attending school, playing sports, living a perfectly normal suburban life, looks at his parents and says, I want to move to South Korea, alone, and train to become a pop star in an industry that chews up and spits out 99% of everyone who tries. And his parents, after what must have been the most agonizing series of family conversations imaginable, let him go. Bangchan entered JYP Entertainment in 2010 as a trainee, and what followed was 7 years. 7
years
of training. Let me put that in perspective because people throw around the word trainee without understanding what it actually means. 7 years means Bangchan entered JYP at roughly 13 years old and didn't debut until he was 20. 7 years of waking up at dawn for vocal lessons, dance practice, language study, physical training. 7 years of monthly evaluations where trainees are ranked, criticized, and, if they don't show enough improvement, eliminated from the program. 7 years of watching other trainees debut in groups while he was told, not yet, and you're not ready, and maybe next time. 7 years of living in cramped trainee dorms in a foreign country, eating cafeteria meals, calling his family in Sydney at odd hours because of a time difference, spending holidays alone because flying home was too expensive or there simply wasn't time. 7 years of his youth, his entire adolescence, spent in a windowless practice room, betting everything on a dream that statistically had almost no chance of coming true. Most JYP trainees last 2 to 3 years before either debuting or being let go. Bangchan lasted 7 because he refused to leave and JYP saw enough potential to keep investing in him. But make no mistake, those 7 years left scars. Bangchan has spoken about the loneliness, the self-doubt, the moments at 3 a.m. in the practice room where he questioned everything. He's talked about calling his mother in tears and hearing her voice crack on the other end of the line because she was thousands of miles away and couldn't hold her son. He's referenced the guilt of watching his younger siblings grow up through phone screens instead of being there in person. And through all of it, every evaluation, every rejection, every sleepless night, he kept going. He kept training. He kept writing music. He kept building. And when JYP finally greenlit the Stray Kids project, it was Bangchan who was chosen as the leader. Not just the leader in title, but the leader in practice. The one who would form the group, who would guide the younger trainees, who would take responsibility for the team's creative direction through 3 Racha, the producing unit he co-founded with Changbin and Han. He was 20 years old, carrying the weight of 7 years of sacrifice and the futures of 7 other young men on his shoulders. Fast forward to today, and Bangchan stands at the center of one of the most commercially successful music acts on the planet. Stray Kids has sold tens of millions of albums, filled stadiums across every continent, generated billions of streams, and secured brand partnerships with global corporations. And Bangchan, as the leader and primary architect of the group's creative output, sits at the nexus of all of it. His production credits span virtually the entire Stray Kids discography, hundreds of songs, each one generating royalties that compound with every stream, every download, every sync placement, every cover performance. Combined with touring income, brand endorsements, variety show appearances, and his solo activities, Bangchan's financial position is, by conservative industry estimates, among the strongest of any fourth-generation idol. And what did he do with that position? He went vertical. Literally. Bangchan's reported property purchase is a residence in the Signal Residences, and if that name doesn't immediately register, let me explain why this is the #1 entry on this list, and why nothing else comes close. The Signal Residences are located inside Lotte World Tower, the tallest building in South Korea and the 5th tallest building in the world, standing at 555 meters and 123 floors of glass, steel, and architectural ambition piercing the Seoul skyline like a needle threading the clouds. Located in Jamsil, Songpa-gu, Lotte World Tower is not just a building, it's a national landmark, visible from virtually every elevated point in Seoul, a structure so dominant in the cityscape that it has fundamentally altered how the city looks from the air. The Signal Residences occupy the upper floors of this tower. We're talking residential units situated above the 70th floor, where the views aren't of Seoul, they're above Seoul. On clear days, residents can see the curvature of the horizon. And there it is. All 8. From the ocean view in Busan to the sky above Jamsil. From a magnate's tearful gift to his mother to a leader's silent triumph 100 floors above the city that raised him. 8 members. 8 properties. 8 stories that look like luxury on the surface, but when you peel back the marble and the floor-to-ceiling windows and the concierge services are really about something much deeper: sacrifice, family, identity, resilience, and the audacious belief that a group of kids who debuted through a survival show with no guaranteed future could build something that lasts. Look at this list again. IN didn't buy himself a penthouse. He gave his mother an ocean. Seungmin didn't chase hype. He studied the market and made the smartest play in the room. Han didn't want a showpiece. He built a sanctuary where his anxiety couldn't follow him. Changbin didn't tiptoe into wealth. He kicked the door down in Cheongdam and dared anyone to question whether he belonged. Felix crossed an ocean twice, once as a scared teenager chasing a dream, and once as a man bringing that dream home to the parents who let him go. Lee No constructed an entire world on his own terms, for himself and 3 cats who will never understand how loved they are. Hyunjin took the worst moment of his life and turned it into art, then hung that art on the walls of a penthouse he bought with the career everyone thought was over. And Bangchan, the leader, the producer, the kid who trained for 7 years in a foreign country while his mother cried on the other side of the world. He climbed so high that his home literally sits above the clouds. This isn't a list about luxury. This is a list about 8 young men who were told no more times than most people could endure, who were separated from their families, who were pushed to physical and emotional breaking points inside a trainee system designed to filter out anyone who wasn't willing to sacrifice everything, and who came out the other side not just surviving but thriving at a level that makes their own mothers cry with disbelief. And the most remarkable part? They're not done. They're still in their mid-20s. The music is still being written. The stadiums are still being filled. The properties on this list, as staggering as they are, might just be the foundation of something even bigger. So the next time you see Stray Kids on stage, goofing around, doing fan service, pretending they're just 8 regular guys who happen to sing and dance, remember this list. Remember what's behind the smiles. Remember the ocean views and the sky residences and the converted lofts and the catwalkways. Remember that these boys are not playing games. They never were. And their moms? Yeah, they're still shocked. But mostly they're proud. Unbelievably, indescribably, tearfully proud. That's it. Channel closed.